people are quite keen and interested, so at least I can send this on to them, and hopefully it will be the start of some other conversations. But we can start somewhere. So I don't actually know everybody, so I'll just introduce myself. I'm Janine Evans, the Interfaith and Belief Coordinator for Somerset Diverse Communities. So my role is really to identify and support people and communities of various faiths and beliefs across Somerset. I think somebody's waiting to come in. Yet. Hi, Esther. Welcome.
Hi.
So my role is really to identify faith and belief communities across Somerset, but the wider organisation is obviously Somerset Diverse Communities. So while my role is quite particular, you know, our team works across all communities, which I'm sure that you're aware of. But I had a conversation with Dean. I think towards the end of last year, about how immigration could really help with communities like new arrivals, or even communities that have been here for a while who are predominantly from migrant backgrounds, and how immigration and people working with those communities perhaps can support each other in supporting our clients and our communities. So that's what this really is about, for Dean to explain what he does, and to answer any kind of questions that people might have. And maybe it might be the first of a few conversations, or maybe everybody's questions will be answered in one. So, you know, we're fairly open to how this will move forward, and it's going to be fairly informal, I think. So perhaps if we could just very quickly just go around and just introduce ourselves and say what roles perhaps are. Sarah, do you want to start?
Yeah, so I'm a resettlement worker with Caris Refugees. So I've been involved with community sponsorship, and I'm also based in the Welcome Centre, so the Welcome Hub. So it can be displaced people, those with refugee status, and occasionally asylum seekers.
And your guest today,
Hi, my name is Mohsin. I'm like Sarah, I'm one of the resettlement workers. I only started last week, but I will be helping sort of like, you know, refugees have come through the community sponsorship, helping them to access services, welfare, and basically just helping them to settle as quickly as possible and hopefully gain independence. So I'm really keen to just to find out sort of like, you know, sort of like what this is about. I'm just absorbing information at the moment.
Great. Anita, can we hear you yet? No. Sorry. Anita is from Diversity Voice. So yes, okay. Welcome. Esther?
Hi, I'm Esther Checketts, and I volunteer with Taunton Welcomes Refugees. So we work alongside the council, helping refugees who've been resettled here. And I'm also the TWR lead on supporting asylum seekers, and I've recently been helping with the asylum seekers at the Bridgewater Hotel. I'm here in place of Rawia. Rawia, who works at Exeter University, she's actually busy today. She couldn't come, so she asked me to come in her stead. She's advisor to our board of trustees.
Wonderful, thank you. For the new arrivals, I just want to let everybody know we're recording because we've had a few apologies, and people would like to be able to see this session. And Justna, my lovely colleague Justna.
Hello everyone, I'm Justna. I work with Janine for Somerset Diverse Communities, and I'm a Community Engagement Officer. I work with ethnic diverse communities across South Somerset and Mendip predominantly, and sort of run different projects, events, anything really to support ethnic diverse communities. So it's really good to actually meet a few people here that I've heard about but never actually had the opportunity to meet. So good to be here.
Okay, so we're just going to, I guess, let Dean kind of take the floor and give us a little bit of advice about what he does, what his role is, and why he really wants to try and engage with people in migrant communities, I guess, and how he can assist in various ways. And we'll take it from there, and then we'll have some discussion.
Yeah, no
Dean.
worries whatsoever. I'll give you a little bit of a background in terms of who I am and what we do. And I don't want you to sort of frown necessarily. Obviously, we quite often get quite a bit of bad media in the press, but it's not all bad. Some of the stuff we do is positive. So please do give me the opportunity to start afresh and then sort of draw your opinion maybe towards the end of the meeting, and we'll go from there. So I'm Dean Monday. I'm the inspector for Bristol Immigration Enforcement, and the area in which my team cover is Gloucestershire, Wiltshire, and Avon and Somerset. So my team's objective, in short, is to keep Britain streets safe and its borders secure. And immigration enforcement is a professional law enforcement organisation, and we work with law enforcement and cross-government partners to tackle serious and organised immigration crime, with a focus of bringing to justice those who exploit the vulnerable. So there's a number of ways in which we can deliver our objectives. We're intelligence-led, firstly, and we conduct proactive enforcement visits with a view of identifying persons who are breaching immigration law. We work closely with the police, and we respond to foreign national offenders who are arrested by the police, and we'll then look to go and speak with those whilst they're in police custody. We also look to safeguard vulnerable people and support them via the relevant support networks. And we'll also take a proactive approach in tackling modern day slavery, human trafficking, and we'll look to again bring to justice those who are looking to exploit others. I've mentioned some sort of myths. So like I said before, we started, the media does portray immigration enforcement in a negative light often, publicising our attempts to arrest, detain and remove individuals. So although this is part of our role, we will only look to do this as a sort of last resort, when there's no other available options, when people aren't complying with us, sort of aren't taking up the advice to sort of return home voluntarily. So there are other ways in which we look to achieve our objectives. One of them is sort of reaching out to you guys today, to try and share some of the knowledge, advice and support that's out there to try and encourage people to go down the right routes to remain in the UK. So my vision, what I would like in an ideal scenario, is effectively for the communities to police itself. If I can wave a magic wand, it would be that we don't have to go in and conduct enforcement activity, and the communities will talk to each other, have all the information that they need to know. And effectively, if someone is here illegally, they'll get the correct advice, and if they don't have any lawful basis to remain in the UK, then they will return home voluntarily. And obviously, another department that does sort of sometimes exploit the vulnerable and those who don't have all the information available, there are rogue solicitors and legal advisors out there. And drawn upon my own experience, I've encountered many people who have been sort of taken advantage of, misled and misguided, and I can only think it's for financial gain at times. And that's not to say that all solicitors and legal advisors are in that world, but there are going to be some who will take advantage and mislead. So it's certainly something to be mindful of. So what I want to do is sort of have these open conversations, informal or formal, where you've almost got a point of contact within the Home Office. And I think the questions that you guys have already been providing me with, some are educating me because I don't even know the answers to some of these questions, because I am frontline immigration enforcement. I don't necessarily see the stuff that you guys are working with, so it's really interesting for me to actually hear what you guys are doing, understand the whole process and not just the process that I'm dealing with, and then it gives me the opportunity then to go and engage with different departments within immigration and the Home Office to ask the questions, and hopefully get the answers that you guys are seeking, which may at times, I imagine, be quite challenging, knowing where to go. But if I can be that point of contact and make things easier for you, then I'm more than happy to do so. I wanted to share some information in regards to sort of right to rent and right to work. I'm not sure whether or not that's something you guys necessarily need to know, but it certainly could be something that you guys can feed on to the wider communities, and it's worth sharing, just to make sure that people are aware. And they're not getting caught up with sort of potential penalties and stuff for doing things incorrectly. So yeah, please do let me know if if it's something you don't think is worth hearing, or it's not for now. But I'll start going through it just so you've got a general idea of sort of the implications of not complying with the rules in terms of renting and in employing. So in regards to right to rent, if the correct checks aren't done and people who are in the UK illegally are renting, then obviously landlords can face potential civil penalties. They don't seem too high initially. So a first offence for someone who's lodging in a house, then that landlord could be liable to an £80 fine. But for a second offence, they could potentially receive a £500 fine. But for those who are renting a whole accommodation, the first offence is £1,000 and a second offence is £3,000. So again, landlords just need to be aware of this and aware that they have to do right to rent checks, and they can do this by looking at by checking the tenant's original documents, but also by conducting online checks using a Home Office online service. And I think a quick Google search of right to rent check brings that up. I think it's the top one, so people can obviously make sure they're not falling foul of that. And then the right to work is quite a bit more. So if someone is found to be employing someone illegally, they could potentially face fines of up to £20,000. And obviously, if you've got more than one person working illegally, that could be quite detrimental to the business, I imagine. And again, similar things to ensure that people aren't falling foul of that would be to check people's identity documents and make sure they've got the right to work, and keep a copy of these documents. So if we ever did come to that place of work acting on intelligence, then we could see that the owner or the employer has taken the relevant checks to try and reduce the possibility of employing someone illegally. And again, online check using a Home Office online service should limit that risk. I want to talk a little bit about voluntary return as well. So I mentioned that earlier. In the ideal scenario, where people don't have the right to remain in the UK, wish to go home, and I have found in my career with the Home Office a number of people who almost feel trapped, don't know which way to go, don't know how to return home, need support, don't have the money. And I don't think people necessarily understand the voluntary return system that's available. And it's something I'll sort of promote to you guys today, and hopefully be able to get some information out the more we engage and share sort of leaflets and posters just to re-emphasize that. But ultimately, for those who remain in the UK legally and their return home is enforced by the Home Office, they can potentially face a 10-year ban before they can re-enter the UK. But those who are in the UK illegally and wish to return home voluntarily, they could potentially face a 1-year ban before they can return to the UK. But if it's done voluntarily, I have known several people to return back to UK just within a month or two, and that's following sort of our advice in that if you go home, you probably do have an entitlement to remain to return to the UK via this route or that route, get the relevant sponsor in place, and that's what they've done. So there's been some really good positive stories in that respect. And when voluntarily returning home, the Home Office can facilitate that return. The benefit of that then is you're arriving at the airport as any other passenger, you're boarding the plane as any other passenger, and no one would know that you'd remained in the UK illegally or entered the UK illegally or whatever that person may have done. And the other options available as well, or offer, is the fact that you can get up to £3,000 in support for resettling back in your home country, something which I don't believe everyone's aware of, and that's to go towards either sort of setting up your own business, finding your own feet, finding a place to stay. So there's definitely a lot of benefits there. And the other thing I would say in terms of voluntarily returning home is the fact that you will have a date in which you're going back. You're not obviously in detention. You've got the opportunity to go and sort of spend some time with your friends, family and loved ones before you go, and just make sure you got everything in order. So my idea is, I'm looking to engage with yourselves and your communities to offer advice and support where possible. I'm happy to meet up via Teams or in person or a neutral venue, wherever people feel comfortable speaking to me. Yes, I am working for immigration enforcement, but I completely understand there are different ways in which we can deal with people. It is not about just going out and arresting people, detaining people and trying to remove people. It's trying to have more of an overview of what we can do, how we can work together, how we can support each other. And I think, even like I said earlier, just the questions that you guys are providing with, if I can provide answers to those questions, hopefully that's going to go back out into your sort of communities and support people in that way. So that's sort of like a whistle stop tour in terms of what we do and what I want to do. In terms of questions that you've already asked, I'll give you some responses that I've had back from the relevant teams. So apology, I'm not sure who's asked the questions, but I'm sure you'd all be interested to know what sort of the questions and answers are. So the first question I've got is, what is the process for bringing religious leaders and their families into the country to work or reside? So I have a link here, which I will share. And the link talks about religious workers, religious worker visas, Minister of Religion visa, and visa immigration. These links will provide further details and the criteria. So let me see if I can just share that in the chat. Wait 1 second. I'm not the best with IT, so do bear with me if it doesn't work. So there's a link that should be able to support in that question. The second question I had was, what is the Home Office process for helping new arrivals settle, in particular those of faith and belief that might not be in large numbers in areas in which they are housed in? So the answer I've had back is, once someone's in the UK on a visa, it should be the responsibility of the local authority to handle any integration housing. So from the searches that this person had done, the council has its own strategy. So apologies, I don't know whether or not the council has it, but my understanding is that they should have their own strategy in sort of linking people in. Again, I've got another link to share, which is from the Chartered Institute of Housing, which gives details of housing rights of new arrivals in departments for levelling up. So I will share that one, which might be of use. 1 second. Hopefully that's come through. The third question, what support is given to the wider community in relation to new arrivals in their communities? So again, there's a link for Somerset Council. There is specific support for Ukrainian nationals that have settled. They may also be able to signpost others who require support. So I think this might just be a link to the council's website in terms of that. Doesn't look like it's come through as just a link. You might have to copy and paste that one into the search engine. Right, so the next question I've got is, asylum seekers who have been granted permission to work in line with the shortage occupation list will in many cases require a DBS check to enable them to take up the position. Please can you advise on how they're able to pass the DBS identity check? It's a really good question, actually, and we come across a lot of people who are working on shortage occupation list in roles that they shouldn't be. And I'm not sure whether or not that's intentional or they don't really understand what they should or shouldn't be doing. Obviously, we try and explain and educate employers and employees when we encounter them in these circumstances. My initial response would be that they probably need to go to the High Commission or Embassy to try and seek relevant identity documents, which would then assist them in passing the DBS check, but I understand there might be some sensitivities around this in which they might not then want to go to the High Commission or embassy, so that makes it challenging. I have been told that there is a process in which they can have their biometrics taken, but this is sort of an intrusive way of confirming their identity. However, someone else has come back to me and they provided 4 different links in which they said should be able to sort of advise further on DBS identity checks. But what they also then did say is we can't explain how someone can pass the DBS identity checks, just in case someone's not entitled to it. So I'll share these 4 links anyway, but those were my initial thoughts, was sort of going to the High Commission and Embassy, but like I say, there may be some sensitivity around that. So there's some more links there which should be able to assist with passing or completing the identity DBS checks. And then I've got an additional 5 questions which obviously come through about an hour ago. Like I said previously, unfortunately I've not been able to speak to the team to ask the questions. I think they're pretty straightforward questions which they'll be able to assist with. But yeah, off the top of my head, question 1 was, why are people in hotels and not allowed to start their asylum claim? I don't know if that's factually correct, and apologies if I get this wrong, but my understanding is that there is a significant backlog of asylum claims. So someone that claims asylum will undergo their initial asylum screening interview before they go into sort of their full asylum interview. I don't believe that the asylum process wouldn't have started. I believe it would have started. It will just take some time due to the number of asylum claims that have been submitted. But like I say, I will get clarification on that. What criteria is used to determine who will go to which hotel? I don't know, if I'm being completely honest. And again, the relevant team hopefully will be able to support us. But I know they will take into consideration sort of safeguarding and putting people in, not mixing certain groups and stuff out within the hotels and try and minimise any sort of risk there. How is the financial support calculated? Again, it's a very good question. It's not something my team deal with. I'll ask that question. My understanding was that everyone got sort of the same amount, but obviously if you've got different family members or children, then it'd probably be different. But I don't know if I'm being completely honest, so I'll find out. Are there any plans to improve in the food in the hotels? Again, I don't know. The hotels I've tend to stay in, I've been okay with the food, but it's not the first time I've heard of people not being happy with the food that's provided. So I'm not sure if the food is different to sort of the regular hotel user. But again, it's something that I could speak to the team and find out what's going on there, because like I say, it's not the first time. And what support can the Home Office provide when refugees move into the area? I think that's similar to one of the earlier questions. So hopefully one of the links will be able to support that. So they were the questions, and that's a whistle-stop tour of what myself and my team do. I'll sort of open it up now to see if there's anything that you want to ask me questions. I'm sure you're going to have loads of questions. I might not be able to answer them all, but I'll try my best. But yeah, the floor is yours if you wish to ask.
Thank you very much, Dean. Yes, first of all, I guess, the initial opening statement certainly has made me kind of go, oh, okay. I'm not
Yep.
sure if other people as well, of communities policing themselves. That seems a little bit, I'm not sure. It doesn't sit well with people who work, well, in my experience, people who actually work with communities and trying to support communities. So can you just explain a little bit what you mean by that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the idea is, in an ideal world, it would be great if we didn't have to come in and do what we do. In an ideal world, it'd be good if the communities could encourage anyone who's within the community who's remained in the UK illegally, and encourage them to VOLDEP and sort of support each other in that returning home or getting the correct visa and support, rather than us having to come in and do what we do, which I understand isn't going to be a very good experience for the people that we're having to arrest and detain and remove. So the idea is, if you could support each other and signpost them in the right way and voluntarily return with the support that's available via the Home Office. That would be, for me, the more sort of sensitive approach and more satisfying experience for that person that needs to go back to their home country.
Okay, so how do they do that? I'm just going to give you a bit of my own experience. As you can all hear, I haven't spent my entire life in the UK. So I was born here, so I'm a British citizen, and I recently returned after living abroad for most of my life, really. Even in my line of work, when it was suggested I needed to speak to an immigration officer, I got pain on my chest thinking, am I doing the right thing? I don't know. I don't understand the system. Do I really need to speak to him? And I'm someone who has a right to be here. I'm a UK citizen. I speak the language. I understand the culture. And so how can we support our communities and the communities that we work with to understand that there may be some benefits in engaging with immigration for them in the long term?
Yeah, what I can do is I can provide you, and I don't have it to hand or on my laptop, I can provide you with sort of the voluntary returns information. We have leaflets in which it confirms everything that's available, the support that's available. But other than that, that's where I feel I come in as that point of contact. So if you've got relevant questions like you've shared with me today, I could try and answer those questions, and I could be that point of contact. And I'm happy to meet, like I said, in person. It's going to take time to build confidence because obviously the nature of the job that I do as well, and my team do, people are going to fear that if they meet up with us, then we're just going to arrest and detain people. But that's not what we'll be looking to do. We're looking to try and encourage people to return home voluntarily. So, for example, if I was to meet someone today, in an agreed location or venue, and they said to me, look, I'm here illegally, I've overstayed, I wish to return home, what can you do? My initial thought would not be to arrest, detain and remove that person. It would provide the information and encourage them to return home voluntarily, because that's what I've agreed to meet in that event, in that scenario.
Okay, so Esther, yep.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how many people actually choose to be returned voluntarily? I work with asylum seekers who've been dispersed here, and as far as I'm aware, they're all legal because they're in housing that's provided by the Home Office. I can't imagine any of them choosing to return home. When you hear about the journeys they've taken to get here,
yeah,
I can't understand why any of them. I mean, okay, if they are living illegally, I can understand that life might become so hard that the return home might be preferable. But considering what they've fled from and the hell they've been through to get here, how many people actually choose to return home?
Yeah, no, it's a good point you raise, and I think that's where it comes down to individual circumstances and scenarios. So I don't have the figures to hand of how many people have voluntarily returned home. When we're dealing with people on frontline immigration enforcement, sometimes people will choose to take that option to voluntarily return home rather than be detained and removed, understanding sort of the different benefits and that option. The people I tend to encounter who do want to voluntarily return home aren't those who necessarily have travel through multiple countries and stuff like that to come here. It does actually tend to, when I reflect to it now, be those who have come here on sort of visas lawfully, but then tend to overstay, and the countries in which they're returning to are considered safe. We wouldn't necessarily look to return people to countries that we'd consider not safe for obvious reasons. But yeah, it tends to be those who haven't gone in the back of a lorry and travel through different countries and had horrible experiences. It tends to be those who have come here, flew in here on the relevant visas, and then overstay. But I do know that there are some scenarios where it comes really tough to remain in the UK, that people become homeless, there's no support available to them. They can't find any work, they can't find anywhere to live. And then in those scenarios, well, I may as well just go back to my home country. Which is sad when they've been promised so much to come here, and they think the pavement's going to be paved with gold and stuff like that. And unfortunately, that's not the reality. And that's where you've got these organised crime groups and that who are effectively selling a package to try and take that individual's money to get them to come here sometimes. And that's not everyone. You know, people have their own reasons for coming to the UK, but there are people who are exploited to come here and promised the world, and then when they do get here, it's not as they envisaged.
Sarah?
Yeah, so the people I work with are here illegally. They may not always have arrived legally, but they are here legally. But we're finding, particularly around work, or they're getting letters from the Home Office, and they want to follow the rules. Everybody that I've dealt with is really anxious to follow the rules, but they can't get in touch with the Home Office. There are no email addresses. It's a recorded message that just cuts you off. So they're getting a letter saying, and they're not sure whether it's saying you've got to do this or not. And they're desperately trying to find out how to follow it. Is there any way that we are actually able to contact the Home Office, even if it's via email and takes a little while for them to come back, but at least there's that point of contact?
Yeah. So the people that you are looking after, are they asylum seekers?
Yeah.
So they've still got ongoing asylum claims and as such. So they should be allocated a caseworker, and I would have thought that they should know the details of the caseworker. And if they want to work, what I always say for those who are like on immigration bail is to put it in writing, requesting to work. And my understanding is, I could be wrong, but my understanding is if they've got an outstanding asylum claim for more than 12 months, then it's almost as good as you're going to be entitled to work, and you'd be on that shortage occupation list then. But yeah, and I think there's a number of roles on the shortage occupation list, including sort of care work and stuff like that as well, which is something that I know that people are taking up. But it's just making sure that people understand what's actually on that list. We encounter so many people who don't even know how to find that list, and they're working in different roles such as car washes and stuff like that, which obviously isn't on there. But in terms of your original question, who to contact, it should be a caseworker, and they should be aware of who that is.
On the letters that I've seen that have come out, it just gives you the main contact telephone number. When you ring it, you get a recorded message. I think what they're doing is actually issuing the original, is it Bell 20 or 201 or something?
201, yeah.
I think they're issuing that updated, but it's coming out saying you need an appointment. And there's an awful lot, there's been confusion, and people are desperate to make sure that they attend everything that they must attend, but we can't clarify.
Okay. So on the original Bail 201, for those who have claimed asylum, is it asking them, are they getting new ones now to say that they must attend bail or reporting?
Well, I mean, I can give you the details of a particular one later. I will get permission, obviously, from the chap. I've been trying to contact the Home Office anyway.
Yeah.
And what's happened is he's been given permission to work. In this particular instance, he's been given permission to work, and he had a letter come out saying, yes, you have that. And I think it's just an updated Bail 201 that's ticking the box to say you have permission to work, you must attend your interview. But it's not clear. And clearly, if you're being called to an appointment, if you need to book an appointment, which is what it's saying, you need to make sure you do it, or you're going to be in breach of the rules. But we can't get hold of anybody because it's just recorded messages. If you email, there's no one to email. You look at UKVI, you just get sent all around the houses. The website sends you back to the telephone message, which cuts me off. I even got them to agree that I could actually pay for like you ring the Home Office sometimes at the UKVI and you have to pay. I even got authority to pay for the phone call, but we still weren't able to get it sorted.
No, it's certainly not an ideal experience, that's for sure. In this instance, I'd say if you get permission, send me the example that you've got,
Thank you.
and I'll see what I can do. But obviously, I don't want loads coming. So what I'll have to try and do is try and solve the issue itself, because you won't be the only person that's having this problem. So I'll then take it further and see if we can try, even if it's just a dedicated email address, which is then monitored rather than a phone, so you can send off the inquiry rather than pick up the phone sitting on this automated service, which then just cuts off. It doesn't make any sense. I've obviously not made that phone call. I don't know what that's like, but I can imagine that experience isn't ideal. But yeah, hopefully I can help you with that one then.
Fantastic, thank you.
I'm not sure if it's the same thing, Sarah, but when I arrived, I had to apply for my UK passport because it expired many years ago, and it was when the entire country was applying for passports, and I would get information saying call this number, and it was a recorded message. So I actually chose not to press the numbers that they told me to press. I ended up pressing all numbers, and one day I got a human being, and everything was sorted.
I have been there. I am probably on the blacklist of the Home Office. But yeah, and it would be ideal just to have somewhere that we can email, which isn't given out, but people know if they come, because then obviously you're only getting the people who are coming in, and it's not about your claim being any sooner. It's just for these very specific queries to make sure that they are abiding by the rules and regulations. And it's obviously causing quite a lot of distress, because say in my experience, everybody that I've come into contact with is desperate to make sure that they follow the rules.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we want. So the last thing we want to do is make the process so complicated that people give up in trying to follow the rules and then sort of go off on their own routes. So I'll look into that. Like I say, I'll look into the individual case, and then we'll try and solve the bigger issue there.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of recognize that there are all of these different organizations who are out there working to support migrants, refugees, asylum seekers, and that their primary roles or their objective is to actually help them become, members of society, contributing, integrated members of society. And so whatever help is out there for them, and perhaps this might be feedback for you to give, Dean, to your department, is that these organizations are probably fielding a lot of the minutiae and the things that the Home Office is being perhaps inundated with, because people don't understand these questions. So they're going to, for example, Sarah's organization, she's helping, she's got the experience, she's got the knowledge, she's dealt with people before, she understands their situation, their anxieties, and so she's actually filtering. So by the time Sarah needs to get hold of the Home Office, it's about something important. It's about something that she said to her client, no, I know you this, you that, this is the route. And so for the Home Office to actually work with these various organizations is of benefit to the Home Office, because it is kind of a filtering system, and they're not getting inundated constantly with the same question, because these organizations can help them.
I completely agree. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why it's important. The more information we can provide you guys with, your sort of communities are going to trust you probably more than they would me, and you're going to be more approachable. So even if we're giving you the knowledge then to share with them, we're still in a way reaching out to the local communities via yourselves.
Also, Nesta, just to go back to what you talked about the types of people that would like to go home. I've just spent the past 10 years, my husband is South African, so we've spent the past 10 years living in Cape Town. South Africa accepts upwards of 70,000 refugees and asylum seekers a year. So there's a lot of people, coming into the country. And from my personal experiences, and also my personal experience of moving countries, like we left Australia because of Islamophobia, went to South Africa where Islamophobia doesn't exist, but actually living in South Africa was certainly not what we expected it to be. So we have the privilege of moving countries because we have the passports to do so. But even those people that we engaged, the refugees that we engaged, came to South Africa from neighbouring African countries, or even other countries. There were quite a few from Pakistan, people coming thinking that they were perhaps going to start businesses and things. And then once they actually got there, and the reality on the ground, even though it had been a difficult journey to actually get there, the reality on the ground was not, after years, turning out to be anything beneficial. You know, I know of quite a few people that actually were looking for crowdfunding or ways people could help to actually get them the money to actually get back home again, because there's no system in South Africa of repatriating people or anything else. So I guess, you know, from my own personal experience is that sometimes people, when they get to a new place, another place, and they've given it their best, they then go, well, this really is not working, and life is not for me. So there are examples, I guess, maybe not very many, but there are examples of people actually saying, you know, this is really, I'm not surviving here. You know, I need to do something else. And the opportunity, I guess, from the Home Office is that they can perhaps get some help to do that. Just to go back, I mean, it was a kind of, I think, the same question that we had on the invitation, but it's really about, I'm just reading it here from the questions this morning. It's really about not the, from what I understood this question, not the support given to asylum seekers in the areas, but the wider community. You know, we've had a lot of reports, particularly in my role in interfaith, is a lot of reports about the wider community being afraid of these new people that are now on their back doorstep, and the media reports of them are often not very flattering or welcoming. And so immigration kind of puts these people in these hotels and accommodation, but what does immigration or the Home Office then actually do to help the wider community support and embrace these people and not be terrified of them and get sucked into the whole negative social media campaigns?
It's a very good question. And just again, thinking about it now, I don't think I've ever seen any kind of communication or anything go out to the wider community, sort of to address them, to let them know that you've got you know, foreign nationals sort of residing in the hotels or anything like that. It seems to just be the communities themselves recognizing it and then sort of discussing it locally. So I'll ask that question as again of the team who obviously deal with all the hotels and that. I will ask the question whether or not we go out to the wider community to try reassure them. But yeah, it's a very good point.
I know they don't. When the Home Office opened the hotel in Bridgewater, the council was informed 24 hours beforehand, and there wasn't any communication from the Home Office to the local community. I first heard about it on Facebook because local people were saying, oh, it's outrageous, there's 7,000 Albanian men going to be placed in a hotel, or none of it true. But that's how I first heard about it. So even the council weren't informed, the community certainly weren't informed.
Yeah, and if I'm being completely honest, I'm not aware of all the hotels in and around my area as well, which are being used. I will only probably find out on certain ones if I go and ask the direct question, or if the police have got some kind of inquiry at a hotel, and then I find out later that it's one that the Home Office is sort of occupying. But I do know it's obviously a challenging situation to be in when you've got large numbers of individuals coming over on small boats and other ways of entering the UK, and trying to handle thousands of people potentially in one day, and then trying to find a suitable place for them to stay, to then try and get the communication out to the local community instantly. It's going to be really, really difficult. But even if you can't do it then, you know, if something retrospectively comes out to reassure people and sort of to try and put a stop to all those whispers of, you know, X, Y, and Z, and sort of scaring people. It'd be interesting to know if that's happening. If not, you know, can we do something? But yeah, that's a good question.
I think it is actually happening. I don't think it's like if it is happening. I think the communities are afraid. First of all, there's, you know, certainly forever in the media, there's been othering of groups that, you know, are not our particular group in that particular area, and there hasn't really been anything to dispel the myths and misconceptions about people who seek asylum, you know, often words of illegal immigration are used and bandied around, and so the wider community, all they've got is the information they get from the media and from social media and from their neighbour. And 99.9% of that is, I wouldn't say wrong, but it's certainly laced with inaccuracies. You know, for Justin and myself, who work with trying to build strengthened, diverse communities, and our job is actually to support people from diverse communities to become active members in the wider community, to build cohesion in society, and certainly to build a stronger Somerset. When you have things like all these people arriving in the local hotels, the local community has no information or support about it. And we understand that it's going to be, you know, in 24 hours, that's very difficult. But, you know, just some feedback that perhaps you could take back is that perhaps something needs to be set up so that organizations, of which we are many, helping settle people, helping communities become diverse, doing community work. There's a lot of organizations around that perhaps, you know, there could be a few that could be called on to help the wider community with some education programs, dispelling the myths and things like that. Because I have personally found in doing this work that you're building bridges, you're doing wonderful things, and then all of a sudden something like this happens and people retract to their original position of fear and mistrust. So it's kind of like, you know, one step forward, three steps back. So if the UK government on the whole wants to try and build, you know, a diverse and strong fabric of society, then they really need to educate the public about what's going on, certainly what's happening in their backyard.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Like I say, I'll take it away with me and see if there's something more that the team can be doing to sort of try and address those concerns.
Okay. And the reason I did ask that, I asked the question about the faith leaders and their families, is in particular we have a Hindu community in Somerset who had a challenge. There's no temple, there's nothing in the Somerset borders, and well, at the time, there is now, I think, in Bath, but who had a challenge with burial. And so because their community is really a few hundred strong, or not even a few hundred, a few people, they didn't believe that they would be in any kind of position to kind of bring anybody over to be the faith leader in their communities. So there's all sorts of just practical issues, I guess, that go on with these smaller communities in Somerset, particularly because once we get outside of Somerset, in the larger towns, you know, there's all sorts of communities and organizations and support, but Somerset is very rural in nature, so it's very difficult to really get from one place to another. It's rural in psychology. I mean, people often don't want to leave their village. They want to, you know, they'll go to the Tesco's, but they won't go much further. These are my kind of observations. And just trying to bring that cohesion is challenging. And so when you have these tiny, small faith communities, you know, they really don't understand how they can get support and things like that. So there's a lot of challenges facing people. The smaller communities, certainly in our little Somerset, which doesn't have a lot of diversity as yet, but it is growing. So there are things that need to be addressed. Okay, has anybody else got anything they would like to say or comment on, or? Nope. Is it all right? I mean, I probably did inadvertently when I was sharing the links, have shared everybody's email address, sorry, because I usually do this on Zoom, not on Teams. But you know, I'm just asking now, is it all right if I share your email address with Dean so that you can, and is that all right, Dean, if people from this meeting, I won't share it wider, but from this meeting, follow up with you about a few things, that would be good. Is that all right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like I said at the beginning, if anyone's got any questions or anything, feel free to drop me an email. If I don't get back to you immediately, please don't panic. I will get back to you. But yeah, it's just an opportunity for us to start talking. You've got a point of contact within the Home Office. I will go out and seek answers for you where I can, and I will also then try and sort of smooth some of these processes up that you're experiencing. I can only try my best, but at least we've got somewhere to start.
That's great. Thank you very much. And thank you everybody for attending. And I hope that it's at least started to answer some of your questions or make you feel like you can support your clients and communities a little more. So thanks everybody. Have a good week. And oh, sorry, yes, Sarah?
I was just going to say, can I just say thank you so much, both to you, Jeanette, for organising it and Dean for coming. It has actually been really useful in terms of having a point of contact and being able to take sort of those things forward. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dean.
Okay, lovely. All right, take care, everybody.
Take care.
And yeah, if needs be, we'll meet again. But hopefully, this will at least help people for the time being.
Yeah, much
Okay, have a
appreciated.
lovely week. Okay,
Yeah,
bye.
take care.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.